Chapter 1. The Invitation Without a Name. Rosie's Cafe in Brooklyn reeked of burnt coffee and grease smells that clung stubbornly to Emma Carter's hair, no matter how often she washed it. At 26, Emma moved through the morning rush hour crowd with the grace of someone who had done it 1,000 times, balancing a tray of pancakes in one hand and refilling coffee for truck drivers and early risers with the other. Her apron was stained, her sneakers worn down, but her smile never faded, not because she loved the job, but because the tips paid bills. And those bills were keeping her sister alive. Emma glanced at the clock above the counter. 10:47 a.m. 4 more hours until the end of her shift, then she'd jump on the subway to Manhattan for her second job, tutoring high schoolers in algebra. Between the two jobs, she barely had time to breathe, let alone sleep. But every dollar she earned went toward a single goal, keeping Sarah, her older sister, on dialysis until she could get a transplant. Sarah, 32, was now too weak to work, tethered each day to a dialysis machine in their cramped apartment. The transplant wait list was impossibly long, and insurance, if you could call it that, covered barely half the cost. Emma had done the math. Even with every cent she had saved, they were still short $200,000. That number haunted her even in her dreams. "Order up!" the cook bellowed, snapping Emma back to reality. She grabbed the plate of eggs and bacon and weaved past Lena, her co-worker and best friend at Rosie's. Lena was a whirlwind of energy, her braids bouncing as she chatted and worked. A sophomore at New York University, she juggled school and shifts with a smile that reminded Emma maybe the world wasn't so terrible after all. "Hey, Em," Lena called during a lull in the crowd. She leaned against the counter, eyes twinkling. "You look like you're carrying the whole city on your back. When's the last time you slept?" Emma gave a half smile, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sleep is a luxury, remember?" Lena's expression softened. She knew about Sarah, about the mountain of hospital bills stacked like some cruel game of Jenga. "You need to take care of yourself. Sarah needs you strong." "I'm fine," Emma replied, though her voice trembled a little. Fine was the lie she told herself every day. She turned to clear a table, but Lena caught her wrist. "Wait, I have something for you." Lena dug into her bag and pulled out a cream-colored envelope with glittering gold trim. It looked completely out of place in the greasy cafe, like a diamond in a junkyard. "Here," Emma frowned as she took the envelope. It was heavy, made of thick, expensive paper. "What is this?" "An invitation to a charity gala tomorrow night, the kind where rich people throw money at good causes." Lena grinned. "My department gave it to me reward for making the dean's list, but I just got accepted to a summer program in Chicago. I'm flying out tomorrow. You should go." Emma's stomach twisted. A gala? She pictured floor-length gowns and champagne flutes, a world so far removed from waitressing and subway rides. "Lena, I can't. I don't belong there." "That's exactly why you should go," Lena insisted. "You're always talking about helping Sarah. This gala is hosted by Blackwell Enterprises, a huge financial firm with money to burn. You could talk to someone, find a sponsor or a grant to cover the transplant." Emma hesitated, fingers brushing the envelope's edge. It was insane. She wasn't a fundraiser or a socialite, just a waitress who didn't even own a proper dress. But Lena's words sparked a small, stubborn hope. What if she found someone willing to help? Just one conversation, one connection that could change everything. "Lena, I wouldn't even know what to say," Emma murmured. "And isn't the ticket in your name?" Lena waved a hand. "No one checks ID. Just flash the invite and walk in like you own the place. You can do this." Emma still wasn't sure, but Lena's hopeful eyes were hard to resist. She tucked the envelope into her apron pocket, heart pounding. "Okay, I'll go, but if I make a fool of myself, I'm blaming you." Lena laughed and pulled her into a quick hug. "You'll be amazing, Em. I know it." That night, Emma sat at the wobbly kitchen table in their Bushwick apartment, the hum of Sarah's dialysis machine filling the silence. Sarah lay asleep on the couch, her face pale and gaunt. Emma's heart ached at the sight. They had lost their parents in a car accident 8 years ago, and since then, it had been just the two of them. Sarah had been the strong one, the big sister who tied Emma's shoelaces and taught her to ride a bike. Now Emma was the one holding them together, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could last. She opened the envelope and pulled out the card. Elegant black ink read, "You are cordially invited to the annual Blackwell Enterprises Charity Gala in support of medical research and public health initiatives. The Plaza Hotel, Manhattan. Formal attire. Tomorrow evening." The Plaza, an icon of luxury Emma had only ever seen in movies. Her hands shook at the thought of walking through its doors. Lena's voice echoed in her mind. "They've got money, Em." Emma didn't know how to ask for help, but she couldn't let pride stand in her way. She pulled out her old laptop, its fan wheezing, and opened a new document. If she was going to the gala, she had to be ready. She typed out a short summary of Sarah's condition, a one-page overview of the illness, the transplant costs, and their struggle. It wasn't a resume, but it was something she could hand to a potential donor if she got the chance. She printed it on the last sheet of paper and folded it neatly into her bag. Then she opened her closet and her heart sank. It held only second-hand jeans and faded sweaters. Nothing remotely formal. But Sarah had a dress, a simple navy blue gown she'd worn to a friend's wedding before falling ill. Emma tried it on, standing in front of the cracked bathroom mirror. It was a little loose, and the hem was slightly frayed, but it was the best she had. She pinned the waist with safety pins and practiced a smile. It felt like armor, fragile but necessary. Lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, Emma felt doubt creep in. What was she doing, crashing a millionaire's gala? She wasn't graceful or polished, just Emma, smelling of grease and living off instant noodles. But then she thought of Sarah, of her sister's laughter, that once filled their apartment with warmth. For Sarah, she would walk into that gala. For Sarah, she would try. Tomorrow, she would step into a world that didn't belong to her, holding an invitation that didn't bear her name. And maybe, just maybe, she'd find a way to save her sister. You're watching Soul Stories, where every tale whispers of love, healing, and hope. If you believe that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life, and that love often arrives when we least expect it, don't forget to subscribe and be part of our journey. Now stay with us. The story is just beginning. Chapter 2. No name, no right, no entry. The chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel glowed golden against the Manhattan sidewalk as guests in designer evening wear stepped out of sleek limousines. Emma Carter stood off to the side, clutching the invitation in her hand, her heart thudding so hard it felt like it might leap from her chest. The navy blue dress she had borrowed from a Brooklyn thrift store clung awkwardly to her frame, its hem frayed and the waist still held together with safety pins. She had done her best, brushed her hair, dabbed on a bit of Sarah's old lipstick, but standing in this sea of luxury, she felt like a fish lost in the desert. She took a deep breath and reminded herself, for Sarah. She just needed to get inside and talk to one person. The single printed page about her sister's condition was tucked inside her worn handbag like a talisman. Emma stepped up the marble stairs leading into the lobby, trying to keep her chin high even as her cheap flats clicked noisily on the stone. The crowd ahead buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses spilling from the grand ballroom. She slipped into the check-in line, hands trembling as she held out the invitation to a woman behind a registration desk. The woman, dressed in a tailored black suit and wearing a name tag that read Claire, took the card. Her eyes flicked over Emma from head to toe, pausing on her scuffed shoes and frayed hem. The smile on Claire's lips barely masked her disdain. "Your name, ma'am?" "Emma Carter." Emma answered quietly but clearly, trying to keep her voice steady even though she felt the weight of 100 stares on her. Claire tapped the iPad in front of her, her brow furrowing. She looked back at the card, then at Emma again, this time slower, as if appraising a knockoff handbag. "I'm sorry, but I don't see your name on the list. This ticket is issued to Alina Thompson, and I'm afraid it's non-transferable." Emma's face flushed hot. She opened her mouth, but the words tangled in her throat. Lena is my friend. She couldn't come, so she asked me to attend in her place. She said the ticket would work." Claire pressed her lips together, exchanging a glance with the staffer next to her, who was clearly trying not to laugh. "Ma'am, this is a by-invitation-only event. We have strict protocol. If your name's not on the list, I'm afraid you won't be admitted." A woman nearby, dressed in glittering sequins and a strand of pearls, turned and whispered to the man beside her, loud enough for Emma to hear. She probably thinks this is some free church buffet. The man snorted, his laughter sharp like a blade slicing through Emma's pride. Her cheeks burned, but she forced herself to speak, voice trembling. Please, I just need a few minutes inside. I'm here for something important. I promise I won't cause any trouble. Claire crossed her arms, her tone ice cold. Ma'am, I've made myself clear. If you're not on the list, you need to leave. Otherwise, I'll have to call security. Before Emma could respond, a tall security guard in a black suit and earpiece stepped forward. He placed a hand on her shoulder, firm but not aggressive, and said, Ma'am, this way, please. His voice was calm but unyielding, gesturing toward the exit. A few guests paused to watch, curious. Someone raised a phone, possibly filming or snapping a photo. Emma heard the whispers ripple around her. What's going on? Probably another nobody trying to sneak in. I'm sorry, I didn't know the invitation wasn't transferable, Emma said quickly, trying to keep her voice even as tears welled in her eyes. Lena didn't tell me. I just wanted to talk to someone about getting help for my sister's medical treatment. Please, I quote. That's enough, the guard cut in, his voice firmer now. He gave her a gentle push toward the doors, enough to throw her slightly off balance. The crowd parted around her like she was something filthy that needed cleaning. Laughter tittered behind her, and contemptuous eyes followed her every step. Emma stood outside under the cold street lamp, still gripping her handbag tightly. Through the glass doors, she could see the bright lights and hear the muffled music and laughter inside. Her invitation now lay on the ground, stepped on by someone's polished shoe. She had prepared herself to feel out of place, but she hadn't expected to be humiliated. Part of her wanted to flee, to run back to her tiny apartment and pretend this night had never happened. But then she thought of Sarah, of her sister's tired eyes, still clinging to hope. She couldn't give up. Not yet. Chapter 3. She's my wife, a life-saving lie. The crowd outside the plaza still murmured, eyes fixed on Emma Carter as she stood frozen under the streetlight, clutching the now crumpled invitation. Tears brimmed in her eyes, but she bit her lip, holding on to the last shred of dignity. The security guard, expressionless, stood firm at the entrance, arms crossed, a wall that would not budge. Music drifted from the grand ballroom inside, opulent and distant, mocking her fragile dream of a chance for Sarah. Ma'am, please leave. Don't make this harder than it has to be, the guard said flatly but firmly. A few guests nearby turned away, pretending not to see, while others kept whispering, phones raised to capture her humiliation. Emma felt herself shrinking, small and invisible under the harsh lights of Manhattan. Then a voice rang out low, sharp as a blade slicing through the air. What's going on here? All heads turned. Emma looked up, heart pounding. A tall man in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo stepped out of a Bentley that had just pulled up. He moved with the unshakable confidence of someone used to commanding a room every step, parting the space around him. His piercing blue eyes swept over the scene and halted on Emma, as if he had just stumbled upon a forgotten memory. It was Daniel Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Enterprises, the financial empire hosting tonight's gala. At 35, he was the embodiment of power and enigma, a man both revered and feared by New York's elite. No one spoke as he approached, his gaze cutting through the crowd before landing on Emma. And in that instant, her face, those warm brown eyes, and the determined, trembling expression triggered a memory from 2 years ago. A park in Brooklyn, a terrified little boy, and the stranger who had saved his son's life. Without hesitation, Daniel stepped forward. His voice, icy yet commanding, rang out. She's my wife. I suggest you treat her with the respect she deserves. Silence fell like a hammer. The murmurs stopped, as if someone had pressed mute on the entire scene. The guard's jaw dropped. His arms fell to his sides. Claire, the check-in staffer, stood frozen, her iPad nearly slipping from her hands. Guests exchanged glances, unable to believe what they'd just heard. Emma was completely stunned. His wife? She had never met this man in her life. She'd only seen his name on the invitation. What is happening? Ms. Carter, Mr. Blackwell, Claire stammered, struggling to regain composure. We didn't know. The ticket is under someone else's name, and... I don't care whose name is on the ticket, Daniel cut her off. voice low but enough to silence Claire instantly. "She's my wife, and she belongs here more than anyone else. Now move." No one dared argue. The security guard stepped aside quickly, bowing his head slightly. Claire backed away, cheeks flushed. The crowd parted like a curtain, creating a path into the glittering lobby. Emma stood there too stunned to move, her feet rooted to the marble steps. Daniel's gaze softened just a fraction, offering a wordless reassurance. He stepped closer and gently placed a hand on her back, a gesture both polite and firm. "Come on," he said quietly, just for her to hear. Emma let him lead her, as if floating through a surreal dream. His hand was warm through the thin fabric of her dress, and his presence calm, steady, made her feel strangely safe and utterly confused. They passed through the glass doors into the grand lobby, where chandeliers sparkled and evening gowns spun in rhythm to the music. She could hear the murmurs pick up again, but this time they were about them. "That's Daniel Blackwell. His wife? Who is she?" Emma glanced at Daniel, searching for answers in his face, but he stared straight ahead, chin slightly raised, as if he had just declared an unquestionable truth. She wanted to ask, wanted to scream that she wasn't his wife, that this was clearly a mistake, but something in his eyes, certainty, purpose, held her tongue. She didn't know who he was or why he was doing this, but in that moment, beneath the lights and luxury of the plaza, Emma Carter, the girl whose name wasn't on the list, felt truly seen for the first time. Chapter 4. The Reunion After 2 Years. The grand lobby of the plaza sparkled like a palace, with marble columns and massive crystal chandeliers suspended from the ceiling. The soft swell of violins mingled with the chatter of guests in elegant evening wear, but Emma Carter's head was spinning. She stood beside Daniel Blackwell, the man who had just declared her to be his wife, in front of 100 curious eyes. His hand still rested gently at her back, guiding her through the crowd as if she truly belonged here. But Emma knew the truth. She was just a waitress from Brooklyn, lost in the opulence of Manhattan. Whispers followed them like waves. "Who is she? When did Daniel Blackwell get married?" A few phones flashed, cameras capturing the surreal moment. Emma kept her head down, trying to avoid the probing stares, but Daniel seemed unfazed. He moved with the effortless authority of a man used to commanding every room, chin lifted, his sharp gaze silencing anyone in his path. "This way," he said quietly, his voice low but firm. He led her through a side door, away from the buzzing lobby, into a quiet hallway lined with plush red carpet and framed paintings. At the end, he opened the door to a small room, likely a VIP lounge. Inside, the lighting was softer, with a leather sofa, a mahogany coffee table, and windows overlooking the sparkling city lights of Manhattan. Daniel closed the door behind them, and for the first time since entering the plaza, Emma felt like she could breathe. She turned to him, clutching her old handbag tightly. Mr. Blackwell, I don't understand what's going on. Why did you say I was your wife? We've never even met." Daniel stood near the window, hands in his pockets, his back to her. He was silent for a moment, as if weighing his words. Then he turned, his deep blue eyes meeting hers, no longer cold, but calm and steady. "You're mistaken, Miss Carter. We have met 2 years ago at Prospect Park, Brooklyn. You saved my son's life, Leo. He went into anaphylactic shock from a peanut allergy. I owe you more than you can imagine." Emma blinked, her mind blank. She dug through her memory, and the image slowly came into focus. A summer afternoon, sitting on a park bench, eating lunch between shifts. A little boy, maybe 3 or 4, ran past and suddenly collapsed, clutching his throat, his face turning blue. A man now, she recognized him as Daniel had screamed in panic, but no one knew what to do. Emma, thanks to a basic first aid course at the community center, had recognized the signs of anaphylaxis. She'd rushed over, rummaged through the boy's backpack, found an EpiPen, and injected him without hesitation. Once the boy could breathe again, she had made sure he was stable and quietly left, not wanting to make a scene. "That was you," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't know. I mean, I just did what anyone would do. I didn't think it was a big deal." Daniel stepped closer, his expression softening with something like gratitude and perhaps a trace of sadness. "Not a big deal. Miss Carter, you saved Leo's life. I searched for you after that day, but you never left your name. No contact. All I had was the memory of a young woman, brown hair, a gentle voice, and eyes that made me believe everything would be okay. He paused, voice quieter. I've never forgotten that face. Emma felt her cheeks flush. She wasn't used to attention, especially not from someone like Daniel Blackwell, the man newspapers called New York's finance king. I, I just did what anyone else would have done, she murmured, voice shrinking. I had no idea the boy was your son, or that you were someone like me? Daniel interrupted with a small laugh, low and warm, softening his otherwise stoic demeanor. You mean a rich guy in a designer tux? That day I was just a father terrified of losing his child, and you were the only one who acted while I stood there, helpless. She shook her head, still trying to make sense of it all. But why say I'm your wife? You didn't need to do that. I just wanted to get in and ask for help from my sister. And now people will think, I know what they'll think, Daniel cut in, voice firm. And I don't care. I saw how they treated you out there, like you didn't belong. If I hadn't stepped in, I wouldn't deserve to be Leo's father, or to hold any kind of dignity. Calling you my wife was the fastest way to shut them up. Emma stared at him, unsure what to say. Her heart was a swirl of emotions, shock, gratitude, and a touch of fear. She wasn't used to being defended, to having someone stand up for her. Thank you, she finally said, voice choked. But I don't want to cause trouble. I'll just go now. Leave. Daniel raised an eyebrow and stepped closer. Miss Carter, you made it all the way here in a dress that doesn't fit and worn-out flats because you had something important to do, didn't you? Don't let those people out there convince you don't belong. He paused, eyes steady. Stay. Attend the gala as my guest of honor. No one will dare question you again. I promise. Emma hesitated, her fingers tightening around her bag. The thought of standing in that crowd while whispers buzzed around her made her want to run. But then she thought of Sarah, of the single sheet of paper in her purse, of the faint hope that tonight might change everything. And something in Daniel's voice, its quiet sincerity, made her want to believe him. All right, she said softly, voice shaking but resolute. I'll stay. Daniel nodded, a fleeting smile touching his lips. Good. Now let's get you a proper glass of champagne. He opened the door and gestured for her to go first. Emma took a deep breath, smoothed her frayed dress, and stepped back into the glittering hall. She didn't know where the night would lead her, but for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. Chapter 5. A little boy never forgot that face. The grand ballroom of the plaza glittered under a sea of lights, champagne flutes sparkling with reflections from the massive crystal chandeliers overhead. Emma Carter walked beside Daniel Blackwell, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. Her frayed navy blue dress and worn flats made her feel out of place amid the luxury gowns and tailored tuxedos. But Daniel's commanding presence and steady gaze kept her from faltering. He handed her a glass of champagne, his voice low and calm. Relax. They're just curious. Emma took a sip. The fizzy wine tickled her tongue, unfamiliar and sharp, making her scrunch her nose slightly. She wanted to say something, thank him again, ask about the little boy he'd mentioned, but before she could speak, a high-pitched, excited voice rang out. Daddy! Daddy! She turned and a small boy, about 5 years old, came running toward them in an adorably tiny suit with a crooked black bow tie. Leo Blackwell, Daniel's son, had the same striking blue eyes as his father, but his smile was bright, carefree, like sunshine. He stopped in front of Emma, his wide eyes blinking in astonishment, then burst out, You're the lady who saved me! From the park! Emma froze, her champagne glass nearly slipping from her hand. Before she could react, Leo had thrown his little arms around her legs, burying his face in her dress. I remember you. You gave me the shot. You told me I was a superhero, he chirped, voice high and thrilled. The surrounding crowd stilled. Whispering faded. Some guests turned to look, their expressions shifting from curiosity to surprise. An older woman with a pearl necklace smiled warmly, placing a hand over her heart. A man nearby whispered to his companion, She saved Blackwell's kid? Emma felt her face flush as heat rose to her cheeks. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She crouched down to Leo's level, speaking softly. You, you really remember me? She said. I'm so happy to see you're doing well. Leo nodded furiously, grinning wide. You said I didn't need a cape to be a superhero. I told Daddy all the time, but he couldn't find you. He grabbed her hand tightly with his tiny fingers. You're my superhero. Emma laughed, the sound rising naturally from her chest. Leo's innocence seemed to melt all her worries. She smoothed his hair, forgetting the eyes watching her. Daniel stood nearby, champagne glass in hand, watching them with a look she couldn't read. He'd seen Leo laugh before, but not like this. Not with such joy. Ever since his marriage ended, his son had carried invisible scars. Leo rarely warmed up to strangers, but with Emma, it was as if he had found someone familiar. A woman in a red silk gown approached Daniel, her voice low and probing. Daniel, the boy clearly adores her. Is she really your wife? Daniel took a slow sip, his eyes still fixed on Leo and Emma. She's the one who saved Leo's life, he said flatly, his voice calm but weighty enough to silence any further questions. He didn't correct the wife part, not because he wanted to maintain the lie, but because he wanted to protect the moment from being devoured by gossip. Across the ballroom, Leo tugged Emma's hand and pulled her toward a dessert table, pointing at a cupcake topped with pink frosting. Try this one. It's so good, he said, bouncing with excitement. Are you still a superhero? Did you save more people? He climbed onto a chair, legs swinging, eyes wide with wonder. Emma sat beside him, smiling. I'm not really a superhero, Leo. I just try to help people when they need it. Like you that day. She told him a light-hearted story about finding a lost dog and helping it get home, making Leo giggle and clap. He launched into stories about preschool, his favorite toy dinosaur, his energy pure and unstoppable. Her voice was as gentle as it had been 2 years ago in the park, when she'd calmed him as he struggled to breathe. Daniel walked over, his shadow stretching across the marble floor. Leo, don't tire Miss Emma out, he said, his tone affectionate. He looked at Emma, and something in his expression had shifted no longer. Just gratitude, but something deeper. Respect, curiosity, wonder. Are you all right? He asked softly. Emma nodded, smoothing Leo's hair before meeting Daniel's eyes. He's wonderful, and thank you for everything. Daniel tilted his head slightly, a faint smile on his lips. I should be thanking you. You didn't just save Leo once. You're doing it again, right now. Emma didn't quite understand what he meant, but there was a sincerity in his gaze that made her heartbeat quicken. Leo tugged her hand, urging her to try the cupcake, and she laughed, letting herself enjoy the moment. But deep inside, she felt a shift. Tonight wasn't just about Sarah. It wasn't just about a crumpled invitation. Something bigger had begun, and she wasn't sure she was ready. Chapter 6. Emma's True Reason and the Proposal. The gala at the plaza was winding down. The chandeliers dimmed as guests in glamorous gowns and tuxedos began to exit the ballroom. The violins had fallen silent, replaced by the clinking of glasses being cleared. Emma Carter stood in a quiet corner, gripping her worn handbag, still a little dazed. Tonight she had entered a world completely foreign to her, had been humiliated, rescued by a powerful man, and unexpectedly hailed as a superhero by a 5-year-old boy. But now, with the glitter fading, all she wanted was to return to her tiny apartment in Bushwick and forget it ever happened. Daniel Blackwell stood nearby, speaking with a group of donors, effortlessly poised in his black tuxedo. Leo, eyes drooping from sleepiness, clung to his father's leg, the bow tie on his tiny suit now completely crooked. Daniel bent down, gently lifting him into his arms before handing him off to an older woman, likely the nanny waiting by the door. He turned back and searched the thinning crowd for Emma. Miss Carter, he called, his deep voice calm but clear. Let me take you home. Emma shook her head and stepped toward him, her voice hesitant. That's not necessary, Mr. Blackwell. I can take the subway. You've done more than enough already. Thank you for letting me in. For Leo. For everything. Daniel raised an eyebrow, his blue eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to read her thoughts. More than enough? You saved my son's life, and tonight you made him laugh more than he has in weeks. If anyone owes someone, it's me." He gestured toward the front entrance where his Bentley waited. "Come on, I'm not letting you take the subway at midnight." Emma wanted to argue, but something in his tone left no room. She nodded. They stepped outside into the cool late May air. Street lights cast long shadows along the sidewalk. Inside the car, silence settled in, broken only by the soft purr of the engine and Emma's quiet breathing. She looked out the window, searching for words. "Leo's wonderful," she finally said softly. "He reminds me of my sister when we were little." Daniel glanced at her, one hand resting on the steering wheel. "You're very close with your sister, aren't you? You came to the gala because of her, didn't you?" Emma startled, surprised he had guessed. She clutched her bag tighter, the folded page about Sarah still inside, untouched. She took a deep breath and decided to be honest. "Yes, I came in place of a friend, Lena. She gave me the invitation and said there might be donors here. My sister Sarah has kidney failure. She needs a transplant, but the costs, we can't afford it. I just hoped I might find someone at charity, a sponsor who could help." She stopped, her face burning with shame. Saying it out loud in front of someone like Daniel Blackwell made her feel incredibly small. "I know it probably sounds ridiculous," she added, voice shaking. "A waitress crashing a gala to ask for money, but I didn't know what else to do." Daniel said nothing at first, his gaze still fixed on the road ahead. Streetlights lit up his chiseled features as they passed. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and steady. "It's not ridiculous at all. You risked your pride to help your sister. That's something not everyone has the guts to do." Emma looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his words. She waited for him to continue, but he just kept driving, clearly deep in thought. When the Bentley finally pulled up in front of the aging building in Bushwick, where Emma's apartment was on the third floor, he turned off the engine and faced her. "I want to cover the cost of your sister's transplant. Let me do that as a way to repay you for what you did for Leo." Emma stared at him, stunned, her mouth slightly open. Part of her wanted to say yes, to seize the chance to save Sarah, but another part, her pride, the thing she'd clung to through all the hard years, rose up stubbornly. "Thank you," she said, voice tight with emotion. "But I can't accept. I didn't come to the gala looking for charity. I wanted to find my way to do this for my sister." Daniel looked at her, and something shifted in his expression, an even deeper respect. "I understand," he said, his tone gentler now, "but I have another offer." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Leo needs someone to care for him after preschool a few hours a day. His current nanny is retiring soon, and honestly, Leo doesn't open up to people easily. But with you, he's different. Would you consider it? I'll pay well. You'd stay in the guest house at my estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. It'll make everything easier." Emma blinked, her mind reeling. Work for Daniel Blackwell? Live in his mansion? The idea felt like something out of a fairy tale, but also full of unknowns. She thought of Sarah, the mounting bills, and Leo's bright smile. This job could help her save enough money on her terms. "You don't have to answer right away," Daniel said, sensing her hesitation. "Think about it. I'll wait." Emma drew in a deep breath and looked into his piercing blue eyes. There was something in them, not just gratitude, but an invitation into a different world. "All right," she said, her voice firmer than she expected. "I'll try. For Leo." Daniel nodded, the faintest smile crossing his lips. "Good. I'll have everything arranged. Now go on in, it's late." Emma stepped out of the car, glancing back as the Bentley disappeared into the night. She stood in front of the old building, still clutching her bag, feeling like she had just stepped onto a path with no return. She didn't know what waited for her at the Blackwell estate, but for the first time in months she felt a flicker of hope for Sarah, for Leo, and maybe for herself. Still following the story? If this story found you outside of Soul Stories, we invite you home to where every touching tale begins, with truth, hope, and heart. Chapter 7. Close Proximity, Growing Understanding. The guest house on the Blackwell estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, felt like a different universe compared to Emma's cramped apartment in Bushwick. The little cottage, nestled beside a lush garden, had large windows that opened to a sparkling lake, and a cozy fireplace that warmed the space with quiet charm. Every morning, Emma woke to birdsong instead of honking horns, but she still felt like a guest in someone else's world, careful not to break anything, not a glass, and certainly not the fragile trust of Daniel Blackwell. Her job was simple but meaningful. Pick up Leo from preschool, play with him for a few hours, and help him with coloring or simple homework until Daniel returned from his office in Manhattan. Leo, with his radiant smile and boundless imagination, made it all easy. On the first day, he dragged her into the garden, clutching a plastic dinosaur, insisting they go treasure hunting through the flower beds. "You're the knight, and I'm the superhero," he shouted, racing around with his cape, really a crooked red ribbon, flapping behind him. Emma laughed, kneeling in the dirt beside him to dig, not caring that her jean skirt got muddy. Her kindness and the way she listened to every whimsical story made Leo cling to her like a big sister. Daniel at first kept his distance. He often came home late, looking worn beneath his designer suits, offering Emma only a polite nod before carrying Leo upstairs. But sometimes he would pause at the kitchen door, quietly watching as she and Leo colored or laughed together. There was something about her simplicity, her unguarded smile that made it hard for him to look away. He was used to socialites with polished charm and hidden agendas. Emma was different. She was light quiet, warm like the flicker of a fire in that guest house hearth. One weekend evening, as a soft mist settled over Greenwich, Daniel arrived home earlier than usual. Leo, exhausted from a day of play, had fallen asleep on the couch, still clutching his plastic dinosaur. Emma was tidying up the kitchen table, where they had attempted baking cookies now, mostly a mess of flour, dough, and crumbs. She jumped slightly when she saw Daniel standing in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, eyes softer than usual. "You don't have to clean this," he said, eyeing the tray of overly browned cookies. "We have a housekeeper, you know." Emma smiled sheepishly, wiping her hands on her apron. "I know, but Leo wanted to make cookies for you. Said chocolate chip was your favorite, though I think we failed pretty miserably." Daniel walked over, picked up a scorched cookie and took a bite. He winced, then laughed, a deep, genuine sound Emma hadn't heard before. "Miserably might be generous, but the thought counts." He looked at her, a new curiosity in his expression. "Stay for dinner? I ordered Italian from a place nearby. Leo will be disappointed if you're gone when he wakes up." Emma hesitated, but his sincere gaze made her nod. They sat at the long dining table, the chandelier casting a warm glow over plates of pasta and glasses of red wine. Leo stirred halfway through the meal, insisted on sitting next to Emma, and chattered sleepily about the treasure they'd found in the garden before dozing off on her shoulder. Daniel carried him upstairs, and when he returned, he refilled their wine glasses. The room felt quieter, more intimate. "You're good with Leo," Daniel said, voice low. "He doesn't trust people easily, not after everything. But with you, you remind me that kids need more than just a big house." Emma sipped her wine, a gentle warmth spreading through her. She didn't often speak about herself, but his eyes steady, patient, invited her to open up. "I get Leo. A little, anyway. When my sister Sarah and I lost our parents, I was 18. Sarah took on everything: rent, bills, even my dream of going to college. Now she's sick, and all I want is to give back, to keep her alive." She paused, throat tight. "Some days I'm scared I'm not strong enough." Daniel said nothing, but his gaze darkened, as if her words had touched an old wound. "You're stronger than you think," he finally said, "and you're not alone. Not anymore." He took a sip of wine, then, as if something inside him cracked open, he began to share. "I used to think I had it all: a family, an empire. But my marriage, it was more of a merger than a love story. When it ended, Leo suffered the most. I tried to make up for it with money, with things, but all he wanted was someone who truly cared." He looked at her, voice softening. "Like you." Emma's heart quickened. His words weren't just compliments, they carried a rare, unsettling honesty. She lowered her eyes to her glass, trying to hide the blush rising to her cheeks. "I'm just doing what feels right. Leo reminds me that good things still exist in the world." Daniel smiled, a rare, unguarded smile, free from the cool polish of a CEO. You know, Emma Carter, you're making me believe that again. Dinner lingered on, their conversation flowing like a quiet river. They talked about little things, Daniel's favorite jazz records, Emma's go-to coffee shop in Brooklyn, and about larger ones, fears of failure, secret hopes, and the weight of expectations. When Emma finally rose to return to the guest house, the moonlight spilled across the floor through the windows. As she walked away, she sensed something had changed. Daniel Blackwell was no longer the powerful stranger who had saved her at a gala. He was a father, a man carrying pain, and perhaps, just perhaps, a man she was beginning to understand. Chapter 8. The Media Storm and the Villain's Arrival. Days at the Blackwell estate passed like a surreal dream for Emma Carter. Each morning she picked Leo up from preschool, and they would spend hours playing in the garden or coloring dinosaurs. Each evening, she and Daniel shared brief, increasingly familiar conversations about the Greenwich weather or Leo's latest wild stories. But deep down, Emma knew this world wasn't hers. She was just a waitress from Brooklyn, temporarily stepping into the life of a powerful CEO. And the world, she soon realized, doesn't let stories like hers unfold without scrutiny. Trouble arrived on a Friday morning. Emma was crouched in front of the preschool gate, helping Leo tie his shoelaces, when a black SUV pulled up. A woman stepped out, her golden hair gleaming under the sun, red stilettos clicking sharply against the sidewalk. She wore a fitted dress and oversized sunglasses, radiating the commanding energy of New York's elite. Emma could feel her cold gaze sweeping over her like someone assessing a worthless object. "So you're the girl in the rumors," the woman said, her voice silky but edged with steel. She pulled off her sunglasses, revealing ice-blue eyes. "Emma Carter, right? I'm Victoria Langley, Daniel's former companion and daughter of Blackwell Enterprises' largest shareholder." Emma stood up straight, still holding Leo's hand, trying to stay composed. "Nice to meet you," she said quietly but firmly. "I'm just here to drop Leo off." Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I know exactly what you're doing. All of New York does. Waitress crashes Blackwell Gala. This morning's page 6 was a real treat." Then her tone sharpened. "Let me be clear, Miss Carter. Daniel may be dazzled by you, but I'm not. I've seen gold diggers like you come and go, and you never last." Her words hit like a slap. Emma's face flushed hot, but she tightened her grip on Leo's hand, not wanting him to see her flinch. "I'm not a gold digger," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm here for Leo. This is just a job." Victoria laughed, the sound like shattering glass. "A job? You mean clinging to Daniel and milking him dry? Please, I've seen your type. And you always lose." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "Walk away from Daniel and Leo, or I'll make sure you regret ever stepping into their lives." Before Emma could reply, Leo tugged at her hand, his voice anxious. "Miss Emma, what did she say? You're not leaving, right?" Emma crouched to his level, forcing a smile, though her heart twisted. "I'm not going anywhere, Leo. Come on, let's get you to class." She led him into the school, pretending not to feel Victoria's glare, trailing behind them like a shadow. But the storm didn't end there. That evening, back in the guest house, Emma opened her phone and found a notification from X. A headline from the New York Post screamed across her screen. "Is CEO Daniel Blackwell secretly married to a waitress?" The article cited an anonymous source from the gala and included a blurry photo of her and Daniel at the plaza with the caption, "Who is this mystery woman and how did she charm New York's finance king?" The comments were worse. "Another gold digger. Daniel's been duped." Emma's stomach twisted. It felt like the whole world was laughing at her. The next morning, from the main house, she could hear Daniel yelling into the phone in his study. "I don't care what the board thinks," he snapped, voice sharp. "This has nothing to do with the company. Shut those stories down, or I will sue." When he emerged and saw Emma standing by the doorway, his expression softened, but tension still lined his face. "You heard that," he said. It wasn't a question. Emma nodded, hands clenching the hem of her shirt. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Maybe I should leave." Daniel frowned, stepping closer. "Leave? Over some tabloid trash?" Emma, you didn't do anything wrong. I pulled you into this. But I'm hurting you, she said, voice catching. And Leo, I heard what Victoria said. She called me a gold digger. Maybe she's right. I don't belong here. Daniel's eyes darkened as if her words touched an old wound. Victoria doesn't get to decide who belongs. She's always tried to control everything, including me. But you bring joy to Leo. And he paused, uncertain if he should continue. You remind me that life isn't just about power and profit. Emma shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. I don't want to be a burden. You and Leo deserve peace. She turned away so he wouldn't see her cry. Deep inside, she knew what she had to do. She couldn't let Daniel and Leo get pulled into her chaos. That night when the estate fell quiet, Emma quietly packed her things in the guest house. She left behind a note on the table, scrawled in trembling handwriting. Thank you for giving me and Sarah something that felt like family. Even for a moment, I'm leaving to protect you both. Emma. She caught a late-night bus back to Brooklyn, her chest aching. As the city lights blurred past the window, she thought of Leo's smile, of Daniel's eyes, and she wondered if she was leaving behind something far greater than hope for Sarah, something she may never get back. You're watching Soul Stories exclusive to our channel. If you're still with us, drop a comment. We read and cherish them all. Subscribe to support more heartfelt, original stories. Thanks for being part of the Soul Stories family. Chapter 9, Leo Runs Away, and Daniel's Confession. The tiny apartment in Bushwick, Brooklyn, had once been a place of survival for Emma Carter. Now it felt hollow in a way she'd never experienced before. The soft hum of Sarah's dialysis machine still filled the living room, but without Leo's cheerful laughter or those quiet, fleeting conversations with Daniel beneath the warm lights of the Blackwell estate, everything felt emptier. Emma tried to return to her old rhythm, serving at Rosie's Cafe, tutoring in the evenings, but every night, as she lay in her worn-out bed, the image of Leo clutching his plastic dinosaur and the deep blue of Daniel's eyes pressed heavily on her chest. She told herself she'd done the right thing. She left to protect Daniel and Leo from gossip columns, from Victoria Langley's venom, from the sharp eyes of New York's elite. But why, she wondered, did doing the right thing feel so much like loss? Back in Greenwich, Connecticut, the Blackwell estate was unnervingly quiet. Leo, once a beam of sunshine, had turned withdrawn. He refused to play with his new nanny, threw his superhero toys across the room, and kept asking, "Where's Miss Emma? Why won't she come back?" Daniel tried to fill the gap, coming home earlier, spending more time with his son, but nothing he did could replace what Emma had brought into their lives. Every night he read the note she left, her handwriting shaky, but her words etched in his memory. Thank you for giving me and Leo a family, even for a moment. He wondered if he had let the most precious thing slip away. Then, one gray Wednesday afternoon, with the Brooklyn sky drizzling rain, everything unraveled. Daniel got the call from Leo's preschool. The teacher's voice was panicked. "Mr. Blackwell, Leo isn't here. He slipped out during recess. We're searching the entire campus." Daniel bolted out of his Manhattan office, heart pounding. He called the nanny, called the police, drove to all the places Leo loved, the park near the estate, his favorite ice cream shop. But then a hunch gripped him. Brooklyn. He remembered Leo once overhearing Emma talk about Rosie's Cafe and asking if they could visit someday. Meanwhile, Emma was wiping down the counter at Rosie's, her apron stained like always. Rain tapped against the glass, and the diner was nearly empty. She was lost in thought when the door burst open, and a small, soaked figure stood in the entrance. Leo, in an oversized yellow raincoat, water dripping from his curls, stared at her with wide, teary eyes. "Miss Emma," he choked, breathless. "I looked everywhere for you." Emma rushed to him, dropping her cloth, kneeling and pulling him into her arms. She didn't care about her soaked uniform. "Leo, what are you doing here? Are you okay? Where's your nanny?" She checked him quickly. He was shivering but unharmed. The thought of him wandering Brooklyn alone or navigating the subway made her heart freeze. "I missed you," Leo sobbed, clinging tightly. "You were gone and I was sad. I want you to come back." He pointed toward the door. There, soaked under the awning, was his tiny backpack, his plastic dinosaur peeking out from the zipper. Emma hugged him tighter, her tears mixing with the rain. She pulled him to the back booth, wrapped a towel around his head, and whispered gently, "I'm here, Leo. I'm not going anywhere now." She called the school to report he was safe and was just about to call Daniel when headlights cut through the storm outside. The door slammed open. Daniel entered, his expensive suit soaked through, face pale with panic. "Leo!" he shouted, rushing forward to scoop his son into his arms. The boy nestled into his father's chest but still clung to Emma's hand. Daniel turned to her, his face a storm of emotion, anger, relief, desperation. "Do you have any idea how scared I was? Leo could have been hurt." "I'm sorry," Emma said, her voice trembling. "I didn't know he would come here. I just found him." Daniel took a breath, trying to contain the whirlwind inside. Rain tapped against the windows like a ticking clock. He looked at Leo, then at her, and something in him cracked open. "At the gala, I said you were my wife to protect you from that crowd," he began, his voice raw. "But standing here now, I wish it were true." Emma froze. The world around her seemed to fall still. What did you say?" she whispered. Daniel stepped closer, so near she could feel his warmth despite the cold. "You're home for Leo," he said quietly, "and God help me you're becoming home for me." Emma's breath caught. Leo looked up, eyes wide and hopeful. "Miss Emma, you're staying, right? We're a family now." Emma laughed through her tears, cupping his face. She looked up at Daniel, and without needing to speak, she nodded. Daniel stepped forward and wrapped them both in his arms. In the dim, rain-drenched diner, amid the scent of burnt coffee and the steady patter of rain, they stood there, a family born from gratitude, now bound by love. Chapter 10. A wedding that needed no guest list. The community center in Bushwick, Brooklyn, was no plaza hotel with glittering chandeliers, nor the lush Blackwell estate in Greenwich. But on a Sunday morning in June, it became the most sacred place in Emma Carter's heart. The chipped white walls were decorated with paper garlands lovingly made by local kids, and rows of old plastic chairs were neatly draped in modest fabric, lined up under the warm sunlight streaming through the windows. Emma stood there in a cream wedding dress bought from a thrift store, where she had sewn extra lace by hand to make it her own. In her hands, she held a bouquet of wildflowers, picked from Prospect Park, the place where she'd once saved Leo 2 years ago. It was a living memory, a full-circle symbol of the journey that had brought her here. There was no luxury at this wedding, no high society guests, no paparazzi, no camera flashes. Instead, the crowd was made up of the pieces of Emma's real life. Lena, the friend who had handed her that fateful gala invitation, sat front row, her eyes shimmering with tears. The regulars from Rosie's Cafe, truck drivers, elderly ladies who always ordered pancakes. The street kids Emma had once tutored for free, now running around with paper bows pinned to their shirts. Sarah, Emma's sister, sat off to the side. Glowing after a successful kidney transplant, a miracle quietly arranged by a foundation Daniel had reached out to, though Emma insisted on repaying it herself, little by little, from her own wages. Sarah's doctor, a stern but kind woman, was there too, smiling like family. Leo, 5 years old and bouncing with excitement in his tiny suit, served as ring bearer. He stood beside Daniel, his crooked superhero bow tie slipping off one shoulder, chattering nonstop. "Miss Emma is the most beautiful ever, right, Dad?" Daniel, dressed in a simple white shirt and gray vest, chuckled and tousled his son's hair. He looked at Emma walking toward him, his deep blue eyes glowing just like they had that night at the gala. But now he wasn't a cold CEO. He was a man ready to spend a lifetime loving and protecting her. The ceremony was simple, officiated by a local pastor who had helped Emma and Sarah through some of their hardest days. As they exchanged rings, Emma's eyes stung with tears. She looked at Daniel, the man who had once called her his wife to shield her from shame, and now here he was, making it real. In her vow, she held his hands, her voice shaking but steady. "Daniel, I vow to love you and Leo, to stand by you through every trial, the way you stood by me." Daniel's smile was soft, his grip on her hands strong. Emma, I vow to cherish you, to love you, and to build a home with you, a place where we all belong. When the pastor pronounced them husband and wife, the room erupted with applause, laughter from the children, and cheers from Lena. Leo ran up, hugging them both and shouting, "We're the best family ever!" Everyone laughed, and Emma bent down to kiss Leo's forehead, her heart feeling more whole than ever before. After the ceremony, guests gathered in the backyard of the community center, where wooden tables were filled with homemade cookies, pizza from the corner shop, and lemonade prepared by Sarah. Daniel raised a glass of lemonade and stepped forward to speak. The crowd fell quiet, eyes turning to him, not as a financial titan, but as a man of this community. He looked at Emma with tenderness and said, voice warm and deep, 2 years ago, Emma wasn't on the guest list for a glamorous gala. But that night, she captured my heart from the moment she saved Leo to every day since when she's brought light into our lives. Today, I'm not just marrying Emma Carter, I'm marrying kindness, courage, in the heart that changed my life. Thunderous applause followed. Emma felt tears slipping down her cheeks, but she smiled and reached for his hand. Leo squeezed between them, hugging them tightly. There, among the people who had lifted her through her hardest days, Emma stood grounded in something far more enduring than luxury love. As the sun climbed higher, the three of them stepped into the small garden behind the center, where wildflowers mingled with soft green grass. Leo dashed ahead, waving his dinosaur toy in the air, shouting something about treasure hunting. Emma and Daniel followed, hand in hand, the morning light casting golden halos around them, like a silent blessing for the chapter ahead. They didn't need a guest list or the approval of Manhattan's elite. They had each other. They had love. And they had a family built not from wealth, but from grace. Under the Brooklyn sun, Emma, Daniel, and Leo walked forward, proof that a lie spoken to protect someone, when born from the heart, can become the most beautiful truth of all.